When I first saw the teaser for the Kingdom live action, I was already hyped. In my opinion, the Kingdom live action has exceeded expectations completely, and I am genuinely looking forward to future movies. Now, does that mean that I think the movie was from a critic standpoint great? Well, there's two ways to look at it. The first way to look at it is the most obvious, which is how good of a Kingdom adaptation is it? Meaning, as a Kingdom fan, did it bring the series we love to life? Did it do justice to the source material? Did it faithfully recreate certain scenes and characters? Did the changes that it made elevate the story rather than take away from it? The second way to look at it is as a neutral movie viewer, so no prior context of Kingdom and just looking at it as a random historical fiction about the warring states. In terms of this lens, does this movie offer a compelling story? Are there engaging characters? Is it well directed? Is the writing polished? I think both perspectives are equally important to consider. With this, I'm first going to give my thoughts on what I think and feel about this Kingdom adaptation from the perspective of me as a Kingdom enthusiast. Then I will break it down a little bit from a neutral point of view in terms of how good I actually thought it was as a movie. This might be acting, individual scenes, story, character writing, and whatnot. Anyway, let's not waste any time and get straight into it. The movie adapted so much and at that so faithfully. There were a lot of things I did not expect them to pull off, like building up the insane hype for the inevitable Oki versus Hoken and creating great anticipation for the highly emotional Kyo backstory. As a Kingdom fan, I'm just happy to be able to see so much of what I enjoyed in the manga brought to life. There'd probably be too many things to get into, so I know what you guys mostly want to discuss are the things that are different from its manga counterpart. In my opinion, some of the changes to the Bio storyline that took place in the live action actually made the storyline even stronger than in the manga. Now, you're probably thinking, Miken, how could you ever claim that someone could write Kingdom better than Hara already did? Well, I'm not exactly saying that. I'm just saying that the writer Tsutomu Kuroiwa must have great knowledge of the entirety of Kingdom, and so retelling any early part of the story in an interesting way should be light work for him. For example, most Kingdom fans, at least I think, would agree that in the manga, the Kyo storyline of her working her way up from a servant to becoming Oki's most trusted aide isn't the most focal point and might feel like a rushed motivation for Oki. So guess what? The Kingdom live action made the smart decision to highlight the Kyo storyline and make it a focal point to heighten the stakes, drama, and emotion of the main plot. It felt like an entire quarter of the movie was dedicated to this Kyo storyline. What kind of history do Oki and Hoken have? Why is this person Kyo's role in it important? What kind of general was Kyo to impact Oki this much? Shin didn't even feel like the main character. Like say, he felt like another supporting character. These retooled elements make for a much more powerful turnaround when Oki finally clashes with Hoken at full strength, and we find out why after all these years he chose to return to the battlefield. It makes Bio, which was already a great storyline, that much more emotional and dramatic. Like I mentioned before, the other thing that the live action did really well was the framing of the main plot and build up to the main conflict. Bio in the manga is very much Shin's first sighting and understanding of what is known as a great general of the heavens. I mean, there is great emphasis for good reason on Shin and his Heishin unit's actions, and Ruboku being revered as this terrifying unknown that was able to best this great general of the heavens. Bio becomes much more interesting in a different way when the main plot is instead built around one central conflict, being Oki and Hoken's eventual clash, in which everything is leading up to like the live action did. This is why setting up Hoken to be the inconceivably monstrous threat early on was good. Having Kyo's storyline be a focal point and really dialing in on that was good. There is a clearer and concise purpose built into the narrative much earlier on, as opposed to the twist and turn nature of the manga where one second it's on Shin, the next it's on Oki, then it's on Hoken, and now it's on this random guy Ruboku. Again, definitely not a knock on Bio in the manga. There's a reason why it's an A-tier arc for me with the nuance it explored for both Shin, Ruboku, and our side characters. But for a movie adaptation, a clear overarching plot that heads towards a climax to keep people invested is essential, since movies aren't weekly serializations. This is something that I have to talk about. The dynamic between Shin and Oki was good, but it felt as though Shin's overall writing, and more specifically the portrayal of his Heishin unit, was much worse than in the manga, in terms of each distinct member being clear. This is the greatest example of what I mentioned before in terms of the difference between looking at the movie as a Kingdom adaptation versus looking at it purely as a live action movie. If I were to just ignore the source material and only look at it as any other movie, as if I knew nothing about Kingdom, then there wouldn't really be anything wrong with the writing, because the reality is there will always be one or two characters to hone in on, and others are usually relegated to a supporting role. Looking at any movie, it is easy to see that some characters will get less screen time and focus, and as a result, development, compared to the others. That's only to be expected. So looking at the standard of most movies, if I'm going in blind, this Shin guy and his squad seem like a small blip on the radar, compared to the main guy Oki. But all things considered, at least there was a degree of development for Shin, which is pretty good for someone that wasn't a focal point. As a neutral movie viewer, basically there isn't really anything that seems wrong with how Shin was treated, because I wouldn't know that his Heishin unit members are supposed to be a little more distinct. Honestly, I'm too busy getting all hype and feeling how epic it is to watch Oki perform. So I wouldn't really consider the Heishin unit's writing or portrayal to be a real criticism. But as a Kingdom fan who loves Shin and knows the depth and potential of his unit, it was disappointing to see in a Kingdom adaptation. I mean, Shin is the frickin' main character, and obviously his unit provides some of the most iconic character portrayals. I low-key still had hoped to see it later on, but it never came. Yes, Beto had his shine, but even that wasn't enough. If I'm telling the complete truth though, I think I'm just salty. Ryusen didn't turn out to be a Thor-looking unit. Though, here is one of the biggest issues that I think the live action had in terms of changes from the source material: the Roboku portrayal. It felt like Roboku's entire character was altered. He seemed much more serious and stern than in the manga. I guess I could have been more open to seeing a different take on the character in the adaptation, but still, I dislike this portrayal, as in my opinion, it hurt the plot in a small but meaningful way. Here's the thing. In the manga, it is almost easier to accept Oki's defeat when Roboku is portrayed as this graceful and loyal guy that would do anything to take down the person terrorizing his kingdom, being Oki. The fact that Roboku is so graceful and at the same time has the talent to best Oki, a great general of the heavens, making him so confused at how this mysterious strategist managed to completely outplay him, is the reason why Roboku ended up being so terrifying, and has set the precedent for him to become the most dangerous general in all of China. However, since the live action does not portray him in this way, instead having him be too monotone, or honestly be way too rigid, and like something is up his ass, it hurts the overall impact and meaning of the original plot. With all of this being said, I've mostly enjoyed the overall adaptation, and I think the changes that they did make probably made for a better movie anyway, with the few exceptions I've already explained. As a Kingdom fan, I genuinely did love the adaptation. Now we're going to look at it from a critic standpoint, as in, how does it measure up to the standard of other movies in terms of overall production? Because I think it's a little unfair to only compare the movie to the manga. If I'm looking at this movie as a completely blind viewer with no knowledge of Kingdom, the one thing that stands out the most is the action. If I were to rate the Kingdom live action compared to other movies in every category, their best category is easily the action. This is probably not at all surprising, especially when the story is about the warring states. To be clear, I'm talking about the Kyokai and Hoken encounter. This action sequence, I thought, was actually choreographed really well. The choreography was extensive, fast-paced and clean. Every move was clear and visible, really capturing the essence of Kyokai's master swordsmanship. Her prowess is clear in seeing her use the sword effortlessly and most of all relentlessly with precision. So this is the perfect time to talk about individual scenes, or rather, the style of crafting each of these scenes. The framing of the scenes were generally quite good. It felt like the movie did not struggle at all to find a consistent style. Most of the time it was raw and for the most part realistic drama. The dramatic and emotional beats were low-key spot on. For example, both the Beto scene and the final movie only scene with Shin raising everyone's morale is consistent in showing how normal people would probably react emotionally to such situations. Nothing cartoonish or outlandish is happening or being portrayed. Like I said, for the most part, it was quite consistent. It's either an emotional moment and the intimacy of the scenes comes through with close or mid-level shots, or takes a step back to show the grandeur of such an epic war during the action scenes. scenes. Thus, it's framing the scenes like this that allows us to take the story more seriously, nothing fancy. Now we get to the writing. The characterization of the main cast is strong, and it's because the characterization and story is pretty much a one-for-one with the manga. Both Shin and Oki's personalities are accurate and well defined, though here lies the difference. The way Hoken was written made him to be quite the human character. In the manga, he's more of a barbaric, mindless amalgamation of martial might. In the movie, Hoken is a little more calculated. This ties into what I said I enjoyed earlier, the slightly greater focus on the Kyo backstory. Hoken almost acted like he knew what he was doing all along. Everything he said and did mattered, to the point that he went out of his way to goad Oki into remembering what he did to Kyo years ago. The manga Hoken would never act this calculated. He simply wanted to fight Oki at his best, and Oki only came to remember Kyo as he kept clashing with Hoken. And this monster questioned Oki about that past version, that unstoppable Oki of past. Again, from only a critic standpoint, having Hoken be more human and giving his actions more intention indeed makes for much greater emotional impact when looking back at the Kyo backstory and Oki's current actions, since Hoken is portrayed as ruthless, with full knowledge of Kyo's importance to Oki. Finally, I want to talk about the acting performances and the casting slightly. Takao Osawa, the actor for Oki. He is by far my favorite member of the cast, and I think the entire movie owes a lot to Takao Osawa because I think he sets the tone for the entire story. Takao's performance is so grand and genuinely touching that it almost encourages the viewer to give in and feel that same admiration that Shin has for Oki. Takao really makes viewers feel like this is what great generals do. This is meant to be epic. This is meant to be intense. Every action holds gravity. It is the Oki attitude, expressions, and personality always shining through that his performance was at all times enjoyable. This movie, I think, is so blessed to find someone that played Oki masterfully to this degree, to portray that sus general that was freaking cool at the same time. Most of the rest of the cast was great as well. Nana Sano as Kyokai, Mio Tanaka as En. Oh my goodness. This casting could not be more perfect. The hair is perfect. The personality and loyalty to Shin is perfect. I also liked Koji Kikawa as Hoken. Now, this review can't end until we talk about the Riboku casting. Nothing against Shun Oguri, but it was a disappointing one. Whether it was the acting or the casting itself, it just didn't feel or look like Riboku. Even if they didn't nail the Riboku look, to put the cherry on top, he didn't have that, like I mentioned before, graceful confidence about him. Like, I'm a good guy, but also I can destroy you at any time. All in all, the Kingdom live action was awesome. I'm glad that we have it more than if we didn't have it. If you made it to the end, thank you for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of the Kingdom live action in the comments section below. What were your favorite scenes? What were your favorite changes? Were you different to me and the Riboku casting was actually fire? Did you enjoy this video? Check out my other videos. Be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to stay updated on my latest videos. I appreciate you guys.